Hello, this is Mike Wilson. Welcome to another installment in the Decoding series. Today, what we're going to work on is one of the more popular requests I get, which is decoding sales. So we're going to use the decoding model, and we're going to talk about how to make better connections with our prospects. So one of the key components of the decoding people model that's covered in the book Decoding People, that I will kind of gloss over and give you a summary of for this presentation, is that what we do is we map a spectrum of people, and in that spectrum of people, there are sort of four general characteristics, personality attributes that we call out in the model. And basically, when we think about it from a sales context, what we want to understand is that when we go to sell things to people, different people think about the sales process, what they're buying, you as the salesperson, and the product, service, whatever it is you're selling from a lot of different points of view. Primarily these four decoding quadrants of questioning, again, covered in more detail in the book. So let's start thinking like our prospects. So a lot of times as salespeople, when we talk to individual prospects, we want to form a relationship with them. We want to get to know them. We want them to make a connection with them. And then obviously part of our objective is to sell something to them that we have to sell. So one of the things that I think is important to understand is to flip that around and really think about why people buy. So let's talk about the four areas of the decoding model and map them to particular personality traits. So one of them is the visionary quadrant, which basically is a questioning quadrant that comes from the why. And what this person really wants to do is understand how whatever you're buying or whatever you're selling or whatever they're buying really fits into their vision of themselves, their business, what they want out of life, that kind of thing. So they tend to think of whatever the purchases they're making in terms of a longer term point of view. You're also going to often, and you've probably sold to this person, the skeptics. They want to know all the details. They want to know how it works. They want to know the process. They want to know all the specifics, the features, the benefits, all that kind of stuff. They want to really analyze what they're buying. Another type of buyer is the trendsetter. They'll buy the things that are current, the things that are everybody else is buying, the things that are hot, things that are popular. And then there's sort of the human buyer that really brings an emotional quality to the buying experience. So they want to feel good about their purchase. They want to understand how their everyday life is going to be better because of what they're purchasing. So as we mentioned, because this is why the decoding model works from a in sales situations, is because that obviously people are the constant in selling. And that's one of the key principles that we outline in the book. All right, so let's take the same model now that we've mapped sort of the people that we typically are going to sell to in a broad generic sense, and let's map their requirements. So one of the things that that every sales process requires is a shared understanding of what the need that you're trying to solve. So in a lot of sales training, what they'll do is they'll focus a lot on this. So get to know the customer, understand what they need, understand why they're trying to purchase something, what are the things that they're looking for, that kind of thing. So fully understanding the requirements that you're going into. Another key component is a clear definition of the process that they will use and go through to buy. So what are the financial requirements? What do I need to do? What are you going to do? That kind of thing. So that needs to be as clear as possible to the person. There's also got to be some kind of personal connection. So sometimes, if the sale really is kind of a marketing type sale, you'll have a less personal connection. But one thing that really is common, especially in this personal connection, is that people want to really feel positive about the buying experience and the process that they use to go through to purchase whatever it is. So the more that you focus on each of these individual areas, the more successful you'll be in sales engagements. So the interesting thing about this dynamic is it becomes more and more important depending on the level of the sale. And we're going to talk about that in a little while and come back to that. So an individual buyer may focus on one or two areas of these buying criteria, whereas when you go into a bigger purchase where there are more people involved, you're going to really need to cover all four areas to be much more successful in sales. So let's break down each one of these buyers in a little bit more detail to give you a sense of, let's say that you're selling one-on-one to a visionary. So let's create a real-world scenario. So let's say that you're selling something very expensive to a large company, and you go into a boardroom and there's a whole group of people sitting around. And let's just say that we could predict the future and imagine that of those people sitting around the table, we could map them into these areas, which is essentially what we're doing when we use the decoding model. So what we're doing is we're covering the full spectrum of people because we know that in a sales situation, those people are going to be represented in the room. So let's just say that for the sake of argument that the visionary person is the CEO, and that person is going to be pretty aggressive, pretty assertive, and pretty clear about what they want. So what you want to make sure is that there's not a lot of muddle, confusion, chaos. You want to make sure you're very specific, and they will gather information from you. Ideally, if you can, you want to flip it around from a sales point of view. You really want this person to lead the conversation, because there's really two reasons they are there. Either they are there because what you're talking about represents something very important to them or their company's future, or the flip side is they are the person that is going to have the final decision one way or the other. So ideally, the more they talk and the more you understand how what we're talking about in this room fits their need, the better off the situation's going to be. They will also be decisive. And this can work for you or against you, because oftentimes there will be black or white, yes or no. So if anything goes awry in the sales process, this could be a very quick yes or a very quick no. So you have to be a little bit careful and make sure that you handle a person like this pretty easily. And what you want to do, or what I should say with kid gloves, and make sure that you address everything from a very logical perspective. They are very rational buyers, and they definitely are going to be seeking value. So they're going to wonder, they're not averse to spending some money, but they want to understand exactly how that investment returns the value they're looking for. So if you're looking from let's take it down to another kind of purchase, something really, really simple. Let's say that it's a smartphone. This same kind of person, you would use the same way. So just imagine them in their personal life, and they come in, they're like, I'm looking for this phone. This is why I want it. This is what they're driving the conversation from a sales point of view. So your decision there is to just give them what they want and walk them right through it and let their own momentum carry it through. Now, the only issue is maybe they haven't completely made up their mind. So if they haven't, then what you want to do is present them with very clear, specific, simple ways of looking at things. This is the better one. This is not as good. This is more expensive. This is less. Very clear cut. Don't go into a lot of details, that kind of thing. So that's how you might approach somebody that you can identify very quickly as being somebody in that quadrant. Also, they need to fully understand what it is that is being talked about. They will gather information until they do, and then they will make a decision very, very easily and very quickly, typically. All right, so let's move into one of the other quadrants. Let's move into the skeptic quadrant. You may have encountered a person like this. This is your typical analytical buyer. In my mind, of course, I immediately think a finance person, a lawyer, an accountant, somebody that really wants to understand what it is we're talking about. So let's go back in the boardroom. We'll use our two examples again. This is where you're going to have to be very specific in defining exactly what's going to happen. So you need to explain everything that's going to happen in the buying process, everything that's going to happen in the delivery process, scheduling, requirements, all that. That level of detail is going to be required for you to be successful with this person. The more you gloss over the details, the more they will stall and want to understand things further. What you really want so the last person we really want to lead the conversation, this is the person we really want to lead the process. So this is the kind of person that you can really understand what it takes for this company to buy whatever it is you're selling. So you want them to identify that process. So they'll go through and they'll say, we need to gain consensus, we need to put in purchase orders, we need to create an RFP, whatever their process is that's going to make them feel comfortable to buy. You need to fully understand it, and they will typically ask these types of process questions. They are an evaluator, and what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to consider. So let's say the other thing that typically happens in a situation where you run into a skeptic or an analytical buyer is they'll want you to break things out. Like they'll say, well, give me pricing at 3 levels, or give me some choices to consider. So they really want they want to be handed a nugget that they can evaluate and make a decision on, and it will be very difficult for them not to have that in front of them. So if you say it's black or white, they'll want to say, well, what are the shades of gray? They're going to want to fully understand the buying process from a cost, time, and alternatives point of view, and they're going to seek value. They're going to see, whereas the visionary is going to seek value. This person's really going to be tough in terms of the financial side of it. they're really going to want a deal. They really want to minimize costs. They're really going to be focused on the cost part of it. Some might even call them cheap. And I think that from a needs point of view, what this person really needs to do is prove to themselves that this is the right decision. So they're going to look at all the facts and they're going to roll them up and they're going to say, well, this plus this plus this plus this equals, yes, we should do this. So let's say that you run into this person again. Let's use our smartphone example, and they're the kind of person that's going to ask you a lot of questions and want to read specs and understand all the details. So this kind of person really likes to read things and consider things. So if you have literature, anything written, if you have comparisons, if you have detailed charts that go over all the specifics of what one model versus another model, this is the kind of person that you really want to hand that information to. If you're a New England area person, then you'll understand that this is probably your typical Subaru buyer. Very analytical in their approach. All right, let's talk about trendsetters. You may run into these people as well during the sales process. They tend to be a bit more impulsive from a buying perspective. They are easier to convince, easier to buy. But the one thing is they will require relationships from you. So typically, a lot of times these types of people will be in sales and that sort of thing. They want to make connections. They want to negotiate the deal. They really want to be part of it and part of the process. And one of the things that they will help you with and they will work with, so you really want them to lead you into the connections you need to make the sale. Let's say we're back in our boardroom again. They'll say things like, you need to connect with X person. You need to make sure that Y person is involved. You need to understand why G person says this and that and the other thing. They will help you through the process. They will always try and also make a connection. And if you've ever been in the situation I just described, they'll start going through stuff like schools and past experiences in other companies. And this is the kind of human this person typically represents the need to make that connection. And they will want to negotiate. They will want to say, well, what if I trade off this for this, and what if we do this for that? And they'll try and create a win-win scenario on both sides. So they really can be an advocate and a relatively easy person to handle during the sales process. They'll also make sure to get everyone on their side involved. The one thing that you'll have trouble with a person like this is they may make decisions faster than some of the other people in the room that we just went through. So in other words, you want to make sure this person does not completely overwhelm the rest of the sales process. Otherwise, you might not get buy-in from the people so you may get an initial commitment, but then the long-term commitment won't be there from a sales point of view. Okay, let's go back to sort of our retail smartphone scenario. So this person comes in, they are looking for the newest, the latest, the best, things like that. You want to point them to things that other people really like. They care about how they look with it. They care about what it means to buy it. They are going to want, cost is not a huge issue to them. They'll spend the money to get something that's cool. That's really how they buy. So you really want to steer and guide them to the latest, the best, the hottest, the newest, the thing everybody's talking about, that kind of thing, from a sales perspective. All right, let's go to our final buyer. And this type is what I'd call the more human buyer. So during the sales process, you definitely want to make emotional connections the best you can. Obviously, we go back in the boardroom. It's not a real touchy-feely place, let's be honest. But we still are all people in the room, and we all still want to have fun. So cracking jokes is good. These people a lot of times will like to have fun. They'll like to get together. They like to do stuff. They like to form relationships, especially in groups. So what we really want to do is it creates a good vibe. It creates a good feeling about the experience. One of the things that's important is that a good impression is presented. So you need to be on your toes as far as that. They will help you create a good environment. So where some of the more analytical types or more skeptical types will create tension, they will tend to diffuse it. So they'll, like I said before, create some humor, ask the right questions occasionally. Often they're a collaborator, so they'll want to work with you and work with everyone involved. And what they really want to get out of the buying process is they want to enjoy the experience. So they want it to be fun. They want it to be human. So a lot of times sales to these people, just like the sort of the trendsetter type person, is easier in a way because they're open to the sales process. They're open to relating to other people. Whereas some of the skeptics are going to be, and the visionary types are going to be much more focused on the very specific details and that kind of thing. These people you'll be able to sell to them because you'll be able to relate to them better. They will also consider how people will be affected by whatever the decision is. So we go back in the boardroom. A lot of times they'll be tied into the day-to-day, so they'll understand what it's really going to take. Like if we do this, what's it going to mean to people's jobs, that kind of thing. What am I going to be doing? So you'll find a bunch of these people. They might not be the most outspoken people, but typically they're very important because they will influence things on a day-to-day level, and they're kind of key from a buying perspective as a group. They will also sort of seek harmony. So if they feel like everybody's in agreement, that's consensus is going to be very important to them. So that's one of the things that you want to really get. So let's say we're back in that boardroom and we're trying to build this consensus. This is going to be very important. If they see anyone that it really isn't on board, that it's going to bother them, and they're not going to be happy about the experience. You want to really make sure, to the best of your ability, you can make that happen. And again, it's an emotional connection, so they need to feel good about what's going on in the room and the process, that kind of thing. So interestingly, let's go through some common sales scenarios that kind of are affected by the model. And one of the most interesting things that I think is important to understand is, because the model is somewhat analytical from a person perspective, which is kind of counterintuitive, what you have to understand is that just like most mathematical models, if you put in more numbers, they get more accurate, right? So any statistical model will do that. It's really true in this one. So let's say that, and so I call this the considered purchase. When someone, I go into a store, I want to buy a candy bar, it costs $1. It's not a big decision. I can make that decision. I'm not going to bother with anyone else to make that decision. It's simple. It's an easy transaction. As soon as I go to the next level, which let's just take so I'm John, I go and I do that, right? Then let's take ourselves to the next level. I'm John and Jenny, we're going to buy a car. Well, now this becomes a whole different thing. So we now have to look at John and we have to look at Jenny and say, okay, John looks like he wants to buy the cool new sports car because he's kind of a trendsetter type. Whereas Jenny's thinking about, well, I might want to have kids in 2 years, and so I got to think about that, right? So I want to start saying, well, does it have a back seat? And what about the fourth, is it a 4-door? And all that kind of thing. So as soon as the money goes up, you're going to have more people involved. Now we go, let's say we're walking into a small company and we've got to sell them something that costs $50,000, which is a substantial amount of money to them. Suddenly they're going to, John's going to pull in Julie and Jenny's going to pull in Jack, and then we got to talk to all of them and we have to get finance involved. And so then we have to even more closely follow the model. And then when we go to that next level and we're going to like a business-to-business sale where we're selling to a large organization to another large organization, it becomes even more absolutely that we have to appeal to all the different areas. And typically that's what happens. So typically people that do deals at those levels understand these dynamics and sort of intuitively and follow them. So what I hope is that you'll understand how these dynamics can help you, and you can be proactive in using them. And I hope that you can save a lot of time in sales training and be more effective without having to go much further than maybe reading the book, but at the very least going through this video. So I cover how all this model works to help you understand better so that you can apply it in sales situations. You can get it digitally. It's available on the iTunes bookstore or the Amazon Kindle. It's also available in print on blurb.com. Just search for Decoding People. If you have any trouble, we're going to have more tools, tips, and tutorials and other things related to the book on idea34.com, and there's links to all of these services as well. Anyway, good luck decoding sales.